Columbia students are continuing to protest today after University President Dr. Shafik dropped a midnight deadline for protesters to abandon their encampment. Manoush released a statement at 11 p.m. last night saying, quote, "Talks have shown progress and are continuing as planned. We have our demands, they have theirs." Students say they won't leave the encampments until the university agrees to financially divest from companies that do business with Israel. Manoush faces mounting criticism from students, faculty, politicians, and donors after over 100 student protesters were arrested. The University Senate is scheduled to meet today to vote on a resolution that expresses displeasure with her decisions. Columbia Spectator journalist Emily Forgash has been reporting on the ground of Columbia University throughout the protests and joins us now. Thanks for being with us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
So I want to get into some of the aftermath of these arrests of 100, I think, plus students, some professors as well. Has this shifted any sentiment of people who were initially critical of the encampment? Has this changed anything, the response by calling the police in and the police's behavior?
So the police were called in by Manoush Shafik the day after the encampment started. So last Thursday, Shafik authorized the police to come onto campus, and that's when the arrests were made. And the encampment had started just over 24 hours beforehand. And there were hundreds and hundreds of spectators to the police coming into the encampment and arresting the students. And very shortly after everyone watched this happen on campus, the people that were watching kind of replicated the encampment on the other side of the South Lawns on Columbia's main campus. And so I would say that kind of watching your fellow peers get arrested and everyone kind of rallying around and seeing that definitely created a different environment on campus after that point, where people were a little bit more, I would say, committed to the cause. And the encampment that is now on the west side of South Lawns is still there today.
Some of the mainstream media coverage of the encampment has accused some of the students of violence, some outside agitators of violence. Have you personally witnessed any incidences of violence, or is the university more upset just about the fact that there is this physical encampment that might be impeding other students from using public spaces?
So when Shafik authorized the NYPD to come onto campus, in her statement, she said that there was a clear and present danger, and that's why she was authorizing the police to come onto campus. The police chief, though, after the fact, said that the encampment itself was very peaceful and that the students were expressing themselves in a peaceful manner. Spectator itself has reported a number of incidents from protests that are outside the gates of Columbia's university, including a protest that happened last night. So there have been incidents of aggression and sometimes violence and hatred in the protests that are outside Columbia's campus. Columbia's campus right now is locked to only people that hold Columbia University IDs. And so that's not to say that the people in the outside protest are 100% non-affiliates, but those are mainly non-affiliates in those outside protests, and that's where Spectator has reported most incidents. But there have been a few incidents on campus near the encampment. The encampment itself, I would say, is largely peaceful.
It sounds like a lot of other universities have joined in after Columbia's encampment in form of protest really led the way. Now, all of these protests nationwide have gotten the attention of Benjamin Netanyahu, who's made a statement about it, calling the protests something that can be compared to the demonstrations in Nazi Germany during World War II. What do you make of this? As a student, a lot of students on campus are in their late teens, early 20s, that you all have become the target of, a political phenomena, potentially, a genocide. Many people believe that there's enough evidence to call this a genocide, that now foreign leaders are making you all the target of their statements and speeches to the press.
I think it's challenging because Spectator has reported that a number of Jewish students feel unsafe on campus, and they feel like the encampment and the protests around the university at its gates have created an environment that's sometimes hostile or just hard to be on. And then Spectator has, though, also reported that the encampment itself and those student leaders who are leading the encampment have oriented their goals, as you mentioned before, towards divestment, and then also towards making sure that we keep our eyes on what's happening in Gaza. And it's not just Netanyahu. There have been American politicians who have tweeted or even come to campus calling for Manu Shafik to resign, making statements about the student protesters on campus and the protests off campus. I think it's very difficult to really understand the environment at Columbia right now unless you step onto Columbia's campus itself, which very few people can do at the moment, only like credentialed press during certain periods of time and people, as I said, with Columbia University IDs. And I would say that it's a very, like the Columbia's Spectator's reporting is a little bit different sometimes than reporting from other news outlets because we're able to be on campus. And we've, as I said, there is a difference between our reports of incidents that many people refer to on campus in the encampment versus off campus. So I think that distinction is important to make.
So the president of Columbia, Manu Shafik, has said that while the students have their demands, which as we've discussed are mostly surrounding divestment, as well as having the university perhaps make stronger statements in regards to what's happening in Gaza, she says that the university has its demands as well. Do you have any sense of what the university's demands are? Are they mostly related to the disbursement of this encampment?
Spectator hasn't yet been able to report exactly what those demands are, but certainly the university is working towards trying to disperse the encampment because, as I said, a number of students have said that the encampment makes them feel unsafe. Manu Shafik testified in Congress last Wednesday, and much of what she talked about was regarding anti-Semitic incidents on campus, and that's what a bunch of the lawmakers were asking her about. And I definitely think that's front of mind for her administration, a number of students, as I mentioned, also the politicians that I mentioned. And so I think making sure that everyone feels safe on campus is probably part of their demands. But then also the university has announced that the people in the encampment have complied to a number of their requests, such as having a New York Police Department officer go into the encampment and make sure that their activities are completely safe, which the people in the encampment allowed to happen. So there has definitely been like ongoing negotiations, and the deadline keeps getting extended back more. So we'll kind of have to see when the negotiations end, what exactly the university wants to happen.
Now, the SIPA or SIPA school within Columbia University decided to create a task force addressing both anti-Semitic hatred and Islamophobia back in November. Have you seen Islamophobia on campus as well? And also, have you seen any impact of this task force or any failure to address, Islamophobia on campus that may have led to students taking an escalatory step to create this encampment?
So the university itself created a task force on anti-Semitism before the encampment started last week. As you mentioned, it was just shortly after October 7th. I think it's interesting to talk about since October 7th, the months following, because there definitely have been incidents that the Spectators reported on of both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We've released a number of articles regarding student experiences on both sides and how they feel on campus all throughout this conflict, not just within the past week. And so there have certainly been instances of that we've reported, like reportable instances. I would say that there is definitely a sentiment of confusion around kind of what the task force on anti-Semitism is currently doing. And then there has certainly been a reportable sentiment that students feel that the university isn't doing enough to address Islamophobia on campus, and that it's more oriented to addressing anti-Semitism, especially within the past week, and especially since, as I mentioned, Shafik testified in Congress. That was a main part of the conversation. And so students have definitely voiced concern that it's kind of that the university is unevenly addressing the problem of who is feeling unsafe on campus, especially in terms of like the administration's rhetoric around the issue.
I'm not super familiar with Columbia's class schedule, to be honest, but I have read reports that you all are heading into finals season. Have you done any reporting or talked to any of the students who maybe aren't affiliated with the protest and what potential impact this is having on their ability to prepare for finals and kind of what the larger academic atmosphere looks like right now with this encampment on campus?
Sure. So starting on Tuesday of this week, the University Columbia's Morningside campus became hybrid, meaning that students who don't necessarily feel safe coming to classes right now have the option to join classes remotely via Zoom. And that has definitely taken place. There have certainly been students in classes who have taken that option, but I will say that there have been many students who are still going to classes in person. Our last day of classes is this upcoming Monday, and so that remote option is still available for students. And there are students who are not affiliated with the protests who are, walking through campus, walking to their classes, going to classes in person. And then our finals are starting soon, and the university announced that it's up to professors' discretion, but that they can make finals, have a remote option, cancel them, do whatever they see fit to make sure that it's fair for all students, no matter how they feel about coming to campus right now. So some professors have canceled finals, some have given remote options, et cetera. So they're trying to be flexible.
Now, Emily, you've done some reporting on the Union Theological Seminary president criticizing the NYPD sweep of the Gaza encampment. We've seen professors get arrested. This isn't just a protest done by the students. It seems that faculty and staff are getting involved as well. How has that shaped the political environment, if at all, on campus at Columbia?
Certainly. So faculty have definitely been involved in this issue since October 7th. Many faculty members have talked to Spectator about what they feel is happening in terms of academic freedom on Columbia's campus. That was definitely a big part of Spectator's reporting since October 7th. And then since the encampment, and specifically since the arrests and suspensions of a number of students, faculty have certainly been involved in this issue. This past Monday, there was a walkout of hundreds of professors and faculty members who on Columbia's campus, and they walked to Barnard's campus to deliver letters to Barnard's president and dean. And so they're certainly involved, and their voices are certainly being kind of amplified in this moment. Many of them are speaking up for students, especially students who have been suspended. So yeah, I would say faculty members are certainly involved. It's definitely not just a student and administrator situation right now.
We're out of time, but Emily Forgash, thank you so much for joining us and helping us to get a real on-the-ground perspective of what's been going on at Columbia.
No problem. Thank you for having me.